welcome to Breaking Bread with Alie and Gabby. I'm your host, Gabby.
And I'm Alie.
And we have a very special guest on the line today. Her name is Rachel Freeman. She is a dear friend of both of ours. We met each other through the Jewish community in Los Angeles and through Israel and a lot of magical experiences. But today we want to really talk about ideas of identity, self-discovery, and also fighting adversity. So Rachel has a very unique story, and she's really utilized it and fueled her fire to overcome certain things in her life through experiences that we're going to get into today. And I think this can definitely speak to many people who have grown up in the secular world that may be a little bit, confused as to what is their identity and who are they and how do they even connect to Judaism or their religion, their respective religions. So Rachel, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachel. As Gabby said, I know Gabby through the Jewish community. I actually met her this summer on a trip to Israel. And after coming back from Israel, Gabby and I both did a class together, and that's where I met Alie. So thank you guys for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. Yes. And Rachel, you're also an author, right? You just came out with a book called The Hunger.
I did, yeah. So I just came out with this book called The Hunger. It chronicles my eating disorder recovery through poetry. So I actually had written the book 10 years ago, wasn't ready to put it out yet because there were so many things about my story that I wasn't ready to reveal to my family and friends and those who are closest to me, because it was my story and I wanted to accept it and I wanted to understand that it was my process and my journey. And then I got to a point where I realized it was no longer my journey. It was still my story, but it was the time to share it and have other people who are dealing with their own struggles have something to relate to and understand that there are other people out there who are looking for someone to help them find their own voice while they're dealing with whatever it is that they're dealing with.
Definitely. So walk us back to the beginning from when you were first kind of trying to find your voice or seeking out your voice.
All right. So I've always been a very outspoken person, but I grew up in a very secular household. It was the typical open one present a day for 8 days for Hanukkah. We do the Seder. If you want to keep Passover, which for me, I became a vegetarian at 11. So it was like eating matzah every day for 8 days. Like I didn't really know anything different. Like that's all that I ate for 8 days. It was at 11, I was given the opportunity to either start studying for a bat mitzvah or 5 years from then having a sweet 16. I chose a sweet 16 because all my friends were doing it. I didn't really have any friends who were Jewish, and the ones that I did were either really religious or very active in the motion picture industry. So like there were two extremes and they happened to be family. Like they were cousins. So it was just very challenging for me to find my place within the Jewish community as a kid. And then I didn't even go to my first bar bat mitzvah besides my brother's, which was like, let's just say the cantor had a motto, have Torah will travel. And we did the whole service at my godparents' beach house. So it wasn't done at a synagogue. I hadn't stepped foot in a synagogue from the time I had my baby naming at 8 days until I was a senior in college when I wrote my senior thesis called Is It Kosher to Question? And it was all about intermarriage. I went to a Catholic university. My dad sat me down at 20 and told me I needed to marry somebody Jewish. Very confused at that point.
Did you feel like that was out of left field when he told you that?
I mean, I didn't really feel like it was out of left field, but it just, leading up to that point, I wasn't really socialized into this idea where being with somebody Jewish was like the main focus of what dating was going to look like for me from then on out. And also going to a school that was Jesuit, like it was, I became the face of Judaism. I didn't even know what that meant, but people would ask me questions about what it meant to be Jewish. And I was like, I don't know. I eat matzah. Like, that's all I can tell you. So it was a challenge because I then went to Israel on birthright my senior year of college. And it was a really challenging time for me because I was coming from a school that was Catholic, I was the only one from my school that was on this bus. It was made up of 7 or 8 different colleges from around the US. So we were unique in the sense that there were people from everywhere on our bus and not just like one location or one state. We were literally from everywhere. 4 days after the flotilla incident in Gaza, it was my first time traveling abroad by myself. And then we had a group leader who was very us versus them mentality. So if you had any questions and you wanted to ask anything that you felt that you needed answers to, it constantly went back to, well, this is how it is and this is why it's that way, and you couldn't question. So everything got turned upside down for me. And then I came back and I went back to the school that I was at, and I had no one to talk to, because if I had any questions about faith, I could go to the university ministry, but then I would be talking to a pastor. And so it was just, I had so many questions and so many things that were going through my mind, and felt out of control over all of these things. And none of my immediate family had been to Israel before. So it was just like me inside this bigger world, and I just didn't know where I stood. Like, I always knew I was Jewish. I always knew I was born into a Jewish family for a reason, but I never understood why. And I remember even when I was about, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12, I was like, I'm going to convert and be a Buddhist. And like, I started learning all this stuff. And then I was just like, but there's a reason why I was born into a Jewish family. There's a reason why the Jewish people went through all this adversity. There's a reason why my story has a lot of adversity in it, and I have a lot of vigilance to keep going. So I saw a lot of parallels in my own story with the story of my ancestors, and I just wanted to keep exploring that. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Oh, interesting, in the time of Pesach that we're talking about this.
Yeah, it's very, very cyclical, just like everything else.
Yeah. What inspired you to go to Israel? And now that you've come back to Los Angeles, I mean, after becoming really confused, tell us a little bit about the process after you were confused, and then how you kind of came back to becoming curious about Judaism again.
Okay, so I've actually been to Israel 3 times. After my first time on Birthright, I had vowed to myself I was never going to go back, because it was just such a challenging time for me. Then as soon as I got back, that was the catalyst to my food restriction and exercise bulimia. Like, it had always been an issue, but that at that point in my life was the only thing I felt like I could control, and it was actually controlling me. So I began to do a lot of soul searching and figure out things that were most important to me and most ingrained within my story. And I began going to this amazing synagogue called Beit Shuva. It's a recovery house. They do 12-step programs, and like a 12-step program plus a Shabbat service all in one. So I kind of felt like this. Yes, it's in LA. It's in Culver City. So I was never a resident, but I always felt a connection to the people who were there, because I felt like I had this deeper connection beyond the Judaism and beyond the search that I was looking for, because these other people who were dealing with their own issues, I just felt this kindred spirit with a lot of the people there. And so it was nice for me to go there. And then I had gotten to the point where when I graduated college until I graduated in May, by that December, I had dropped 50 pounds. Like, it happened real fast. And my parents wanted to send me, I was still doing everything I needed to do. Like, I held a job. I held multiple jobs, a couple of them in the food industry, because I needed to be around food all the time, even though I wasn't eating it. And it was just like this constant issue. But I was trying everything to avoid everything in front of me. And so I got into a graduate program at the same time, and I was going to start that. But I had also gotten into Brandeis Collegiate Institute. It's like in Simi Valley. It's the largest piece of Jewish-owned land outside of the land of Israel. And I went to this Jewish camp for young adults, 5 weeks. And I had never done the Jewish camp thing in my entire life. So that was the first time I felt that kind of connection. And I basically told my parents, I was like, I know you want to send me away. I need this connection to my spiritual being to help me understand where I'm at in this process. And when I come back, if I feel like I still need extra supports, yes, please, by all means, like I will go away and I will go to a facility. But prior to that, for about 8 months, I was in intensive outpatient, like outpatient meetings. I did group meetings. I did group therapy, individual therapy, art therapy. I worked with a dietitian. Um, Literally, the doctor told me not to step foot into the gym or do exercise for an entire year. Like, it got really bad really fast. And the only thing that kept me alive, honestly, was my search for that deeper connection with something else. And so when I got into BCI, it really helped solidify my Jewish identity. And then also a blessing in disguise, or a silver lining, was Beit Shuva, which is the congregation that has the recovery house. They came and they did a presentation called Freedom Song, and the residents came and basically did a musical about their recovery and how they're getting through recovery with the help and support of faith and what that looked like for them. And so that kind of helped inspire me to continue writing about my journey. And after going to that camp, I met some people that lived in Israel, and I met people that didn't, that lived other places, and we were trying to figure out a meeting spot, and we're like, hey, next summer, let's just go to Israel. So I ended up going back to Israel after I told myself I wasn't going to go to Israel. It completely changed my life. Like, I remember exactly where I was when I was like, up until that point, I never wanted to get married. I never wanted to have kids. I remember where I was in spot when I was like, I'm having a kid. Like, I know I want to have a child. I want to birth my own child.
Woo!
And so it was just like, it was all meant to happen in its own time. And I never would have thought it was going to be in Israel. And then fast forward to last summer when I met Gabby on our Israel trip, like, that was such a formidable time. And that trip within itself was like, it's what I needed to get past everything that I had been through and solidify, like, this is what I want from my life. This is the spiritual path and journey I'm on. These are the people that are being introduced into my life at this point because they need to be with me for the rest of my journey. And it's something like I can't even put into words about how I have felt after coming back from that trip and becoming more involved in the community.
Wow. It seems like every time you go to Israel, it just keeps getting better.
Amen. Take it to Israel. I resonate with that whole spot thing too. Spot is such a magical place with such magical energy. And Rachel, I really appreciate you two being so forthcoming about your journey and like your struggles, because I also had an eating disorder when I was younger, like from 9 up until like my mid 20s. And I just really resonate with the whole like control thing and like, trying to figure out like what your identity is. And so many young people, especially girls, struggle with this, and they don't really understand that it's not about food. It's about control. So I think that it's really beautiful that you're like, wait, I want to get in touch with my spiritual side so that I can find a deeper connection, so that I can feel more balanced and like whole, because you're like literally filling yourself or not filling yourself with food, right?
Exactly, which is why my book is titled The Hunger, because it's not
love it.
just the hunger of food, it's the hunger of everything. And food itself, yes, it becomes the fuel to make your body go, but you can't actually go anywhere if you don't have that fire that Gabby was saying. That fire is literally the fuel that is pushing you forward. So it's just so important. And something I learned through my recovery is that while like a lot of people have a lot of food issues around food and body issues and body image issues, food addiction is the only addiction that if you stop, you die. Whereas if you are an alcoholic, if you are using drugs, if you stop those, you get better. But if you stop food, you die. And like, I had to get to the point where my heart was palpitating every night before I went to sleep. I had to literally, without thinking that I was praying, I had to tell myself that I would wake up the next morning because I didn't know if I was going to. At one point, I also have an autoimmune disorder and I have to get my blood checked every 6 months. At one point, they went to get my blood, and I kid you not, a drop came out. And that's because my blood wasn't flowing throughout my body, to the point where I ended up passing out, and they were like, just drink some orange juice. You need to get some sugar in you. And because I was trying to control everything so much, I didn't even want to put the orange juice in my body because of how much sugar was in that box.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's so crazy. And something I love about Judaism is how it revolves so much around food. But I think we also have to understand that while it's revolving so much around food, what that can do and how that can trigger other people in our community. Because I don't think that we really look at that and realize that. But every Friday, I remember that. And I had an ex-boyfriend who used to tell me, Rachel, on Shabbat, you can't gain weight. So eat whatever you want. And so there'd be times when I would restrict for almost the entire week. And on Friday, I would just binge, which is not healthy. I'm not saying do that. But like, at least by Friday, I knew I was going to be getting the sustenance I needed in my body, which is so sad.
Wow. So you mentioned camp being a really important experience for you in your growth process. Where did your mindset change from what you experienced on your first Israel trip and the viewpoints of like not being able to ask questions and it just being this is what it is, to that shift once you were around a community of people that identify with the same background as you?
So I think what gave me that shift, I mean, don't get me wrong, I had some amazing people on my birthright trip and still people that I keep in contact with and are some of my best friends. But there was something about being fully removed from my place of comfort. The motto of the camp was get outside of your comfort zone. And that's literally what they made you do. Every day we would wake up, we would have some sort of a morning circle. Everyone had some sort of a job. It was kind of like working on a kibbutz. We all were responsible and accountable to each other, not only ourselves, but to each other. And we did some sort of drash learning every day. And then it broke off into a creative piece. And so within that creative piece, that's where I was able to like dive into what I really needed to do for myself within Judaism, but through art, and kind of figure out how I could express how I was feeling on a two-dimensional piece of canvas that I was able to share with other people. And that while I was looking for my voice at the time, I was able to actually put all of it onto this piece of canvas that is literally as tall as I am, and it's hanging up in my bedroom, because I didn't have to say anything. People could just feel all the emotions and all the different layers of paint and everything that's like scratched off on the canvas and like cracked on the canvas. Like, it was literally an act of love and an act of inspiration. And it shows on the picture. And it's just like, I got to share that with everybody. And then I was also able to read, we did a Malava Malka, which is like a talent show. And I was able to read a piece that I had written during my recovery. So at this point, I may have gained about 12 pounds from the 50 I had originally dropped. So I was still like a stick. But it was the first time that I was able to express myself through words. And in front of about 80 people, I read this piece that I had written, and it was the first time I accepted it in front of a bunch of people.
Wow. Do you have that piece with you?
I do. It's actually really funny. I just opened up my book, and that's the page it opened up on.
Do you want to read it for us?
Sure. It's called Another Day. For a year and a half, I opened my eyes. Another day, chest heavy, body cold. I pulled the blankets over my outstanding clavicle, breathed in, peeled my limbs off my bed. I felt the flatness of the stomach I had come to know. Tears swelled, hunger pains. deprivation, reached for water. I didn't know how I became like that. Foreign face in the mirror. Bit an apple. I closed my eyes. Another day, chest heavy, body cold, tears swelled.
That gives me the chills. Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So, where do you find yourself now in the journey? Because obviously, we're all stuck at home in these crazy times. And so, we've seen a lot of people hoarding food in the supermarket. So, where does that leave you in your journey? Are you, you know, completely to a place where you feel secure with your decisions and you're healthy with your body? Or are you struggling with having to stay at home and the current circumstances?
So when it comes to having food and body image issues, I don't know if you're ever 100% cured or 100% okay, because you can put on something and love what it looks like, and then all of a sudden be at a certain angle and be like, why did I put this on? I look awful. But that's because it's inside of our mind, and our mind is very deceitful. What I realized at the beginning of this was I am at a healthy place for myself. And daily, I remind myself if I feel myself like wanting to go on a 3 mile run instead of 1 mile, like my body now tells me, I listen to my body. You need to stop. You need to just be and enjoy the moment. And that's the thing, is while I was dealing with all this, I wasn't enjoying anything. It was my routine to literally, in essence, binge and purge. But going through something like this made me really understand and connect that I'm not the only one who has struggled with this, and that will continue to struggle. And it became really evident to me that it was really challenging the first time I had to go to the store and get a bunch of food to stock up for about 2 weeks, because I never keep more than 3 days of food in my apartment. Like, that's just something I haven't done since college, because I have this inner fear that if I have all this food, I'm going to binge and then it's going to set me off. So I had to be really cognizant of that. And then I realized, well, I'm not the only one that might have those thoughts. So then I had revisited a blog that I had started a couple years ago that I had written about food and food that I had eaten throughout LA. And then I was like, this is the time that I'm going to use my voice, the voice that I thought I couldn't find, to help others realize that they're not alone in this, because
Wow.
it's really hard. And even now, but now it was so exciting. I got my second Amazon Fresh delivery the other day, and I was just like so excited, because now I'm so happy that I'm able to enjoy having these kinds of things in my house. I do know what are my triggers. Like, I had a full bag of chips last night. I'm like, once this opens, like, I'm not gonna be able to put it down until it's gone. So I just know little things that I'm not gonna have in my house. But for the most part, I feel like I'm in a really healthy place. And as long as it's, as you guys both said, it's finding a balance. So there are going to be days, especially like today when it's raining, like I'm not going to be able to go out and go on a walk or do the things that I want to do. So I need to, in order to not be triggered, I need to eat something that isn't going to make me feel like heavy and weighed down, so I don't have to feel the pressure on myself to go and do something to help rid myself of those feelings. Because at the end of the day, those are just feelings, but those feelings have an underlying connection to something. And I remember a therapist telling me at one point during my recovery, Rachel, fat is not a feeling. Fat can be shame, fat can be pride, fat could be you're wanting to control the situation, but fat itself is not a feeling. Wow. So when you get down to like what it actually means and why you're feeling that, then that's when you can start working on yourself. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Funny thing is too, like with food, you can bless it and elevate the energy of the food that you're putting into your body, right,
Yep.
Alie? Like that's a big deal, especially on Shabbat and just in general, especially when you're more religious, praying over food, elevating the energy, and then putting it inside so that you don't feel that heaviness and it comes with a lighter, higher vibration.
I actually want to talk about hunger a little bit and satiety, since that is also the name of your book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because when I was in Spot, we had my rabbi gave a talk about the body and the soul and how to feed both. And so many times we think that we have to feed our bodies food to like feel joy and to feel love and connection, especially as Jewish people. Everything is food except for Yom Kippur. And how do we find that balance of nourishing our soul? And like, what kind of things have you done to nourish your soul so that you don't feel that need to fill yourself with food or sex or drugs or whatever other people are trying to fill themselves with?
Yeah, so that's, I think, where writing comes in for me, because I have been writing since I was 7. Um, that voice that I had been looking for, I wasn't able to physically put a tone behind it, but I was always able to write it down. And um, that reminds me of this other piece. I'm going to read it. I actually wrote this while I was in Jerusalem as Shabbat was rolling in. And I remember sitting in front of a cafe and I was watching people like scurry home, or some of the businesses were taking their chairs out and or putting their chairs back in, removing their umbrellas. And I was just sitting there, and I was sitting on the cobblestone, and I was just like, this just reminds me, this piece is called Identity Crisis. I am using this day and time to separate myself from other days and times. But more than ever, I am blinded to this feeling. It is upsetting and striking the depths of my soul. It is not my control, so why am I fighting it, defending it, living a life and pretending it's not me? It is rather a manifestation of a desire to be what I am not. However, I am choosing to let it define me.
Mm.
So it was just one of those things. I wrote that, and like that was kind of dark for me. And then within the same, I think what happens when I'm writing is something will come to me and I'll write it. It can take me 5 to 10 minutes and then the piece is done. Like, I don't force myself to write, but as soon as I stopped writing that piece, I remember this piece came to me right away, and it's called Cobblestone. As the city begins to close and the world begins to pray, whispers in the wind say, "Thanks for another beautiful day." The breeze kisses my face, and again I have found my place, a coffee in my hand with feet on promised land. Many people dream this dream, and I'm fortunate to be part of this scene. Pictures only express so much. Stories tell just part. The only way to know what's true is to follow what's in your heart.
Mm.
Wow. That
So
last line.
Everyone read this book. Read your book, Rachel.
Yeah, and so another thing, like this book was, it was a challenge for me to put out, because it wasn't just, it was my story, but there's also a whole addiction section, because my closest and dearest friend since I was literally a baby was going through her own issues, and she was on heroin. And so I wrote my perspective of what it was like to have losing like a best friend at the time spiritually to a drug. And my body image was so in this place where I wanted my body to look like that of a junkie. And there's about 30 to 40 pieces in here about that. And it's so crazy that you can be so spiritually and karmically connected to somebody even while you're going through something like this. Because there were times when I would wake up in the middle of the night, and that morning I would find out that she was arrested. I would find out that she OD'd. I would find out that something had happened to her. Like, I mean, she would go missing for days, and then something would happen, and in the middle of the night or within that same like period of time, a piece would come to me. And it was just crazy. We were so karmically connected because of everything we had been through together and where we were spiritually. And she was just trying her hardest to get through what she was dealing with, and I was trying to get through what I was dealing with. But at the end of the day, we were both just dealing with this issue of trying to find our own footing through this literally identity crisis, and trying to find ourselves within it.
Right.
Sorry.
I think that speaks volumes in general to like the process of identity and how many people are going through the same thing at the same time, whether you want to believe it or understand it or not. It could be the same reason, maybe food, like you two, Alie and Rachel both have experienced something very similar, or it could be like drug addiction versus a food problem. And so many of us struggle with self-identity. I think that's a process of life. It's just on how it's going to take over and how you're going to deal with it, and what journey it's going to lead you down. But that should also speak to the idea that like you're not alone in this, and there are people that may not be candid about these things just yet, but they can relate to you. So I think that's an important message, that you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
I want to tie this back to Judaism for a second, though, because this makes me think that like I've been learning more over the past probably 2 years, and I also went to the Kabbalah Institute and learned more about Kabbalah. And they say, and Kabbalah is like the ancient text of the Zohar, right, which is Judaism. Now, in that text, they say that we all have soulmates and that people are here to teach us lessons. And everything in our lives is here. It's not happening to us, but it's happening for us, right? And Hashem is always testing us and teaching us, like, how can you grow? How can you grow? How can you grow? So it's interesting that through all of this adversity and like wanting to control and having these identity crises, how it's actually made you more connected to Judaism and more connected to your neshama, to your soul, right? But if you had been born super religious, you may have gone the opposite way and been like addicted to drugs or like just rebelled in another way. So it's just so interesting how, because you weren't put into the path to be religious, you've decided to create your own path and become more connected in your own way, and now created this book and this poetry and all of these experiences that you can share and educate people. So I just think that's really fascinating, and how it all ties back to Judaism, that literally God is just testing you maybe for a higher purpose, to educate other people and to share your story. So I really, really appreciate you for sharing this, Rachel.
Thank you.
And also we kind of covered this last week with Rabbi Teller, but we were asking, like, who is God? Does God exist? Things like that. And, there are a lot of people out there that aren't sure that that's even a thing. If I can't see it, I can't feel it. Does it exist? But in your case, would you look back in retrospect at your journey and say, I would go through all of this again to be where I'm at today on my spiritual path? Or would you say, no, if I could have taken it all back and never gone through this experience, I would have never done it? And I think that also plays into the idea of God, because it's like, did you find purpose in that?
I mean, I wouldn't take back anything that has happened to me, because it has made me who I am. It has brought those people into my life that I need in my life for those moments. It's also helped me recognize that there are people who have come into my life for very brief times, and whether or not I understand that or not, they were there to teach me something. And I think it's when you start getting more connected to the spiritual realm, you understand that there's a purpose in everything. And so I wouldn't trade these experiences. I wouldn't want these experiences or wish these experiences on anyone else, but I wouldn't say I would have never wanted to go through them, because it has brought me to a different level of being. And that's the thing, is I realize that I'm just a being, and my spirituality and my belief system is something that no one can take away from me. It can be shaky from time to time because I am a human, but it is essentially who I am. And if I'm strong in what I believe and what I want, then no one can ever take that away from me, and they can't take away my experiences, because they're mine.
Wow.
Amen.
And then, amen, seriously. And tying this back to people that may be in the beginning of their journey, going through identity struggles, is there anything you would say to them, especially in the secular world? Like, is there any piece of advice that you would give to somebody that may be, struggling with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important is to remember that everything happens for a reason, and whether or not you understand what that reason is in a given time, with time, you will become more wise and become more connected to what it is or will be. But you don't have to know the ending if you're still working at the beginning, because all of these things are happening for the greater good and the greater outcome. And we are literally the sum of the whole parts, or the sum of the whole, or the parts of the whole. And without any one of us, the whole would be incomplete. And so we all need it to complete whatever it is that's around us. And no matter what you believe in, at the end of the day, we are a human species. We are one. We're all connected. And it doesn't matter what you call God or Hashem or Allah or any of that. Like, it doesn't matter, because we all have love and faith, and like, we're all born to feel these things. And like, what, there's a couple pieces that it makes me think of that I wrote, but why define something by a name when it is something that connects us all?
I like that.
How would you
It's really
suggest
beautiful.
somebody becomes more connected to God? Do you think it's our responsibility as Jews to learn about our culture and our religion and our past?
Well, I think that that's very multi-layered, because Judaism used to literally be a peoplehood and like, we were a race. And then, like, to the point where our skulls were measured, and they used craniology, I believe is what it's called. Like, that's how they measured to see if Jews were actually smart or not. And then we became a race of people that people didn't like. And then it broke up. It made people either go really extreme and super religious, or hide their identity and follow just the culture. But the culture and the religion are so incredibly intertwined, and you can't do Shabbat without the prayer. So the prayer part is the religious aspect, but Shabbat and coming together as a people, that's the culture. So I think it's when you understand where you fit within that, and not having to feel like you have to define it for anybody. You just need to understand what it means for you. I don't know. It's going to get a little shaky how I'm going to answer this question. I don't believe that it's any one person's job to tell another person how to be this or how to be that. I think you need to find where you connect, or where you feel comfortable, and that's where you go. Because at the end of the day, if you tell somebody you have to do X, Y, and Z, it's going to make them, for the most part, as human beings and with human nature, it's going to push you the opposite way. So you need to find where you have that connection, or where you find the most comfort. If the comfort is just being in a house on a Friday night with a group of people, then call it that. Call it a hangout. But there's underlying reasons why people do it. And I think that we get so caught up in these labels and these ideas of what should be, and not why we're actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So get curious for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And how has Judaism changed for you from the beginning to now? Like, what is your perspective on the religion today?
I mean, my perspective is just that I think it's hard. It's hard for me to define, like, the religiosity of it and what that means to me, because I don't know if I identify as being a religious Jew, but I also know that I identify with the culture. And as I had just previously said, like, the culture and the religion are so intertwined. So how can I be one and not the other? And I don't think that it matters what it is that I believe, but I think that it's how to just, at the end of the day, we all just want to be good people. Whether you'd say, I'm going to be a good Jew, I'm going to have a Jewish home. Like, we know what that means because that's part of our culture, just like other cultures have certain ways that they do things. But it's just gotten me more connected to the idea of like facing adversity and never giving up, and that life will throw you all these trials, and how you go through them, and how you just come out as a better person or with more experience, and how you can help other people who have those similar experiences. That's how I see myself within the broader like scope of being Jewish.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. Is there anything, Alie, that you want to go into, or you feel like
I think I just want to say that this has just been a really awesome, very real conversation. I think that the more that people are able to have, and the thing that is the most amazing to me about Judaism and our community is the fact that you meet so many amazing people with such interesting stories. So I would just really invite everyone to get more connected, share your stories, like find the people you trust, and like find a rabbi nearby and start following them. I mean, we all met through Rabbi Teller, thank God. And
maybe don't stalk them, but like follow them on social media.
well, like check them out, like see who they are and like what they're doing, and if they speak to you. Like I streamed Central Synagogue's Manhattan services this weekend, and I was like, this is so cool. It's like Kabbalah, they're singing, and that resonated with me. So find what piece of Judaism resonates with you, find your story, and this has been great, Rachel. I really appreciate you for being on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Rachel, I also want to say, like, thank you for being so candid and authentic here, because there are going to be people that are struggling with similar things at home that listen. And I also want to like broaden this out to anyone who is listening. And if you've gone through a similar journey or just a journey in general that you'd like to share, we would love to have you on to be able to shine light on different topics, different, struggles, so that we can possibly help other people out there. Because I think the key right now is to help other people in these moments. We have the time off to do that. We have the time at home to focus on being better people and, acting of service. So I'm going to extend that out. If you guys do want to, be a part of this, please reach out to us. We're on social media and you can follow us there. And for further, study of Rachel's poems and to just read into, her journey, feel free to grab her book. Rach, can we still get that? Like, what's going on with the book right now?
Yeah, so you can actually purchase the book on Amazon.
I'm gonna get it right now. I'm gonna get it right now.
As we all have said, it's called The Hunger. My name is Rachel Freeman, and I also from time to time post other poetry that I've written on my poetry Instagram, Little Girl Big Words, LILGRLBIGWRDS, so Little Girl Big Words. And then also my main Instagram is One Love 128. One Love because in college I actually did a lot of work in Jamaica, and I just think that we're all very interconnected and we all share one love. Like at the end of the day, we are all one, and I just think that we should all get together and feel all right, like Bob said.
Definitely.
But if anyone has
colors too, I love it.
Thank
Is
you.
It One Love with ONE or
it's ONELOVE 128. Yeah. So actually on my cover, it's got, this is supposed to be me, and the mouth is very faint, a Rasta headband, the prayer hands, a yin yang, a heart, and then food, nachos, because I love nachos.
I love it.
But if anyone has any questions, or they just feel like they need to talk to somebody at this time, like, please feel free to reach out to me, because I am definitely here to help anybody who needs any sort of anything at this point. Amen. It's not easy.
Cool. Life ain't easy, that's for sure.
No.
All right. Well, Alie, is there anywhere people can find you, like social media? You want to shout that out?
Well, you guys can always find me on my Instagram at Alie V Health, ALIEV as in Victor, Health, HEALTH. And you can also find me on Facebook, Alie Valerio, ALIE Valerio. And you can, of course, follow our podcast, like it, subscribe, share it with your friends, tag us, all that good stuff. So
Amazing.
now it's thank you for tuning in. Love your 3 favorite Jewish girls.
Yes, of course. We'll subscribe there. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Bye, you guys.
Have a
Bye.
blessed Passover.